Hey guys, it's Chris, and welcome back to another Game of Thrones Season 8 video. So let's jump straight into it. No intros or wasted time. But really quickly, let me thank my newest Patreons. Thank you to Marcy Millam. Thank you to Witchy Gypsy. And thank you to Randy Suimatsu for the upgrade. Really appreciate the support, you guys. Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 3, The Long Night, which ended up being one long night, was both great and bad in other ways as well. So I wanted to take some time to think about it and process this a little bit more. And this may not be as bad as far as a lot of people thought about this surprise ending. So be sure to stick around to the end. But I'm going to do this a little bit differently and kind of hit the major points here. This was all one big battle scene. So anyway, we start off with the build-up, and this build-up was outstanding. The tension was literally palatable. I mean, there was no real dialogue needed. Nobody really knew what to do. I mean, what do you do before you die? But they were all scared shitless, so no real dialogue needed. This was really great. It's just simply time to pay the piper. We saw Ghost charge into battle as well, which I thought was kind of dumb. There's no reason for Ghost to be out there just for fan service. Just show him in the castle with Jon or something, and then go down to the crypts and protect Sansa. There's no reason for Ghost to charge off into battle because you know more than likely he shouldn't survive that. Although we do know from the preview video for episode 4 that he did survive, so that's a good thing, but it was just kind of dumb for him to be with the Dothraki. And speaking of the Dothraki, they charged into battle, and it seemed to be a dumb tactic at first when you think about it because they just kind of rushed off and they all died pretty much instantly. Only a handful survived of the entire Dothraki that Dany had brought over from Essos. But when you think about the Dothraki, their strength is offense and charging on horseback, not waiting around to hold the line. So in that sense, it does make sense to use them at their strongest because that's what they're really good at, is open battles on horseback. And the cavalry is not just supposed to sit there and wait for somebody to come to them. But it really made a great visual when Melisandre arrived out of nowhere, by the way, which is really odd how she came from the north. But anyway, she did show up, as we expected. And she had a very big role. When she lit up the Eric's, that was a badass looking scene. And it also helped to light the scene as well so we could kind of see what was going on in the distance. And then of course later on, she lit up the trench as well. So she did have a role to play, and a fairly important role. Although it didn't really make a big difference in the battle itself, it did buy our character some time as they retreated back into Winterfell. But this does confirm what we've always said around here, at least on live streams and when people ask and some other videos I've done, that Melisandre would come back and use some type of fire magic to help win this war. So that was really cool. And of course she sees Davos, and Davos does let her in and says, there's no reason to execute me. I'll be dead before dawn. So with somebody like Melisandre, you're really not sure how to feel about her death at the end. As she walks out, her job is done. She takes off her necklace. She lets go of the magic that keeps her alive and sustained, because she's done a lot of horrible things, but she's done it for all good reasons in her own eyes. So you're not really sure how to feel about it. But she kind of also equates to the Night King, because she was a slave named Melanie that was brought into this religion of the Lord of Light in R'hllor, and she sacrificed for the last 200 years in some way, shape, or form her own life to help save the world. And then of course we get to some of our deaths. Ed dies first as far as one of our main characters, although he's really a B-level character. We all love Dolorous Ed, and he of course died first, saving Sam. Lyanna Mormont went out like a champ, killing a giant, and we kind of all expected that, so RIP House Mormont, because Jorah of course died as well. Beric's purpose wasn't to give life as we kind of thought about with the kiss of life like in the books, but it was to save a life, being Arya, so she could stick the Night King with the pointy end. Jorah also died the way he should have died, saving his love, and I think if he got to choose, that's the way he would want to go out. And some of these deaths are really great because there wasn't any cheesy lines or last little sayings. There was just no words needed. You can kind of see it in their eyes, and that said everything needed to be said. And of course, Theon, one of our favorite characters for a lot of people at least, died totally redeemed, and he heard that from Bran directly, so he died hearing what he needed to hear. Theon, you're a great man, thank you. And then does what he needed to do, going out like a champ, trying to kill the Night King. We knew it wasn't going to work. He could have ran in the other direction, but he was ready. His time was now. That's all he really needed to hear. The other people thought he was a good person again and gave his life trying to protect Bran. And he did a damn good job before the Night King and everybody showed up, by the way. Then we had Sansa and Tyrion in the crypts. They talked about their marriage. Sansa actually says, you were the best of them, talking about her past husbands. So there may be something going on here, we'll see. But she brings up divided loyalty, and that's when Missandei kind of got mad and said, yeah, if it wasn't for the Dragon Queen, we'd all already be dead. So we're going to see this going forward in the next episode, I'm sure. More about this divided loyalty thing when they realize they're all on the same damn team, and I think they proved it this episode. Dany certainly proved it to Sansa. They made a point of showing her watching Dany burn the army of the dead from above on Dragonback, holding true to her word. So she's gained a lot of respect for Dany, so I think that'll be a big conversation of them getting on the same team in the next episode. And we could see eventually a Sansa and Tyrion marriage where they actually love each other. We see Bran warg the Ravens to kind of see the Night King and what's going on. And although this is a great shot because there were a lot of great, epic, really vivid shots here of the Night King and the dragons, etc., a lot of these shots could simply be posters. They were so gorgeous. But this is the first time we actually see the Night King control whites by like waving his hand or whatever. And this is after Melisandre had set the trench on fire, of course, and he controlled them to make them basically create a body bridge over the fire so they could get through and continue their mission into the castle and destroy everybody alive. But I'm not sure what Bran was doing the rest of the time. I think it was simply to mimic Bloodraven in the cave, because as the Night King approached in the end, you thought it was going to be just like Bloodraven, where he's sitting there in warg mode and he simply kills him, and I think we all kind of expected that. We certainly didn't expect the ending we got, but we'll get to that in just a second. Then we had, of course, great dragon battles. They were kind of hard to see, of course, it was dark, but you saw the three-way dragon action. It was hard to tell who was getting injured at times, but you could see the green of Rhaegal as he bit down on Viserion's neck and kind of messed up half his face. And Drogon comes in and knocks the Night King off his dragon. And I really liked the little twist on how the Night King used the weather, the mist, so to speak, that we saw before in Hardhome and other places, and last season Beyond the Wall, to kind of blind Jon and Dany to prevent some of that, because they simply could have taken out most of the army of the dead with the dragons before the Night King got there. He actually used that magic he has to bring the storm, so to speak, and kind of leave them flying blind, which I thought was a really nice touch, actually. By the way, Rhaegal was injured, but we do know from the episode 4 teaser that he is alive, so he does obviously heal. And again, we saw Drogon actually at the end there when Jorah died as well. So even though he got injured pretty bad with all the whites overwhelming him, apparently he shook them all off, burned them up, whatever, and then he landed again, so we know he's good to go. So the good thing about this episode being the way it ended, it gives our characters still at Winterfell in the north some time to kind of recuperate and talk about things. And I want to get to that at the end of this video about how this thing ended. We could still get some more information about the Night King. I will say in this episode they overused the whole idea of saving each other just a little bit. I mean, it was pretty overwhelming. You felt hopeless the entire episode, as they meant for you to, but they kind of overused the cliche of, you know, somebody about to die and somebody happens to be right there behind them and saves them at just the last second. Although I'm fairly happy as far as the balance. We did lose a lot of characters, and of course if we had lost a lot of main characters, then people would have been mad that you couldn't finish the story with the main characters. So I don't think anybody could possibly be happy either way with this type of episode. You can't please everybody. So I think they overused that a little bit. It would make sense for somebody like Jaime to die. He only has his left hand, and it's simply overwhelming. It doesn't matter how good you are. And I think we got a good sense of that with Arya. Hell of a job up on the battlements of Winterfell, but once she got overwhelmed and started having to run, she had to sneak around like a cat, which of course set up the endgame. Then we go to the crypts, and we did have a few Starks apparently raised from the crypts, and I'm glad they didn't overuse this, because I think this is an idea that sounds kind of cool, but would have been kind of dumb to see just plain skeletons or whatever. And as I've been saying in live streams, there's just not enough actual bone material left in these ancient crypts. They're simply dust to be put back together and raised as whites. So at least they didn't overuse that, but you did have a few coming out. So the crypts were in fact the safest place to be. Other than that, there was no real importance like people thought, other than, ironically, a place of the dead actually saved the living. And then of course we have the end game. Let's jump into this. I know everybody wants to talk about this. The Night King died in episode 3, when you still have 3 episodes left, when a lot of us thought he should have been the last big bad in-game player, because they've been building him up since episode 1 of Game of Thrones. The prologue of the books is the same way. It opens up and sets up this looming threat in the background while all the men of Westeros deal in their political squabbles. And then to have him come up and lose this one battle so quickly, even though they still won the battle but lost the war, was kind of surprising and shocking for a lot of people. So I completely understand both sides of the argument. It didn't seem right because we didn't get a lot of answers. Now I will say I have no problem that it was Arya actually giving the final blow to kill the Night King, because it actually fits once you look back at things. I mean, Syrio told us in season 1, what do we say to the god of death? And she killed the metaphorical god of death. We saw the blue eyes reference again back when Melisandre told her when they met the first time that she would close many eyes forever and named various colors, green, blue, etc. And although Melisandre didn't know exactly what that meant at the time, she comes back this episode and puts it all together. What do we say to the god of death? Not today. And obviously this sends Arya on a mission of what she's supposed to do. And of course, when you think back to things like Jon giving her needle and saying, stick them with the pointy end. So I have no problem with who actually dealt the final blow. The problem I think a lot of us had was we just didn't get a lot of information on who he was and what he wants now. But after sleeping on this and thinking about it a little bit more, I think most of us just simply expected a literal Azor Ahai or Prince that was promised figure in Jon, and so people had an issue with Jon not being the one to kill the Night King. But I've always said on this channel that the Azor Ahai prophecy and Prince that was promised was not a literal person. It fits everybody in some way, shape, or form. If you look at the prophecy itself, it fits Dany literally, it fits Jon metaphorically, as well as a lot of other characters. And that's the reason why it was always about people working together. And that's why the prophecy itself fits so many people. But they tell us directly, even in the books, that prophecy will come back to bite you in the ass. It's a dangerous thing, and it's not necessarily be taken literally. But with that said, if you think about it, the Azor Ahai figure was about bringing everyone together, and that's exactly what Jon Snow did. He's the one that got the wildlings together with the Night's Watch. He made people understand it doesn't matter about all these houses and rules and last names. He got Dany over with her armies and dragons. He put all this together and got everybody in the right position. So in that sense, Jon is still Azor Ahai, or the prince that was promised, or whatever, because that's what the whole entire prophecy was about in the first place. He still facilitated the endgame by getting them all at Winterfell, the right people at the right time. But again, the most disappointing thing is we get no Night King answers as far as who he is and what he wants. They never confirmed him being a Stark or anything. But again, I think we all assumed, including me, that we needed to get those answers before he died. Why can't we get them after? For example, next week, everybody at Winterfell has time to sit around, celebrate, and heal. Then they can say, for example, who the hell did we just kill and why was he here? And how can we prevent this from ever happening again? So then Bran can still give us some answers since he's still alive, as far as looking back at the original Long Night, whatever. So there's still a possibility that he can give us some more answers on who the Night King was, as far as being a Stark or just some random first man, whatever. At least give us a couple answers as to who he was and why he came back now. So again, I think we all kind of got tricked into believing we would get that answer before he died, including me, but there's no reason we can't get those answers now that he's actually dead and gone. And I will say really quickly, I thought it really interesting earlier I saw on Twitter, Vladimir Furtick, the guy who plays the Night King, posted this. The Night King changes those babies by touching them. He changes Viserion by touching him. And then he uses the hashtag food for thought. So we're all thinking, of course, now he touched Arya because Arya did the killing blow. He did touch Arya. What does that mean? I don't necessarily think it means anything. He is certainly dead and gone. There is no more Night King. There's no more White Walkers, no more Whites, etc. But could that be hinting at some big third twist where somehow it affects Arya, since magic is still alive? Let me know what you think about that in the comments below. So overall, this episode was one of the best visually I've ever seen, with the dragon fights and all the chaos and the hopelessness that you felt with the score and everything. Very little dialogue, but what dialogue was there was needed. It was all about the feeling of this hopeless war and was supposed to be nasty and bloody and hard to see things. So visually it was absolutely stunning. But again, I think many people had a problem with the lack of answers on prophecy and the Night King and who he was and what he wanted. But again, I gotta say, we all got tricked into thinking we needed that before he died. There's still a chance we get some answers after he's dead. So anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. I know this is a very controversial episode, and I can clearly see both sides of the argument as far as who it was or how it happened or how Arya got in there anyway. But there's still a little hope that we may get a few answers in the next episode, or in the last 3 at some point before Game of Thrones Season 8 ends. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think. And as usual, thank you for all the support, especially you guys on Patreon. And a huge shout out to my executive Patreon SmokeScreen producers. And if you dig what I do here, please give these videos a like, comment, and share. And be sure to subscribe to get everything. And click that notification bell so you're notified when I drop a new video. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.